The drill bit screamed against ancient rock as sparks flew in all directions. Sam Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the readings on his handheld scanner. 3 days of boring into this asteroid had finally paid off. The device showed a massive hollow space just beyond the next few meters of stone. "Tony, shut it down," Sam called to his partner over the noise of the mining equipment. The younger man hit the power switch and sudden silence filled their makeshift workspace. Around them, the converted cargo bay of their ship hummed with the quiet sound of life support systems. Sam had been mining asteroids for 12 years, ever since he left the Earth Defense Force. Most rocks contained nothing but iron and ice, maybe some rare metals if he got lucky. This one felt different from the moment they found it drifting alone in the outer system. His scanner kept picking up energy readings that made no sense. "Boss, you sure about this?" Tony asked, running his hand through his dark hair. "That energy signature is off the charts. Maybe we should call it into the authorities." Sam shook his head. The authorities would take over the find and leave them with nothing. They had families to feed back on Mars Colony. Besides, 12 years of experience told him this was something special. The final layer of rock crumbled away under their cutting tools, revealing a chamber that took their breath away. Crystalline formations covered the walls, glowing with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The space stretched far beyond what their headlamps could reach. "What the hell is this place?" Tony whispered. Sam stepped through the opening they had created. His boots crunched on crystal fragments that had fallen from the ceiling over countless years. The air felt different here, charged with some kind of energy that made his skin tingle. At the far end of the chamber, something massive lay curled against the wall. Sam's first thought was that they had found the remains of some ancient creature. As they moved closer, their lights revealed scales the size of dinner plates dulled to a lifeless gray color. One enormous wing stretched across the floor, clearly broken in several places. "Is it dead?" Tony asked, his voice barely audible. Sam approached slowly, fighting every instinct that told him to run. The creature was easily 50 feet long, with a head that resembled the dragons from old Earth stories. Scars covered its hide, some so deep they looked like they might go all the way to bone. Its eyes were closed, sunken deep into its skull. Then one eye opened. Sam froze as an orb the size of his head fixed on him. The eye held intelligence, pain, and something that looked like surprise. The creature made no move to attack, but Sam could see its chest rising and falling with slow, labored breaths. "It's alive," Sam said, never taking his eyes off the dragon. The creature tried to lift its head but seemed too weak to manage more than a few inches. Its eye tracked Sam's movements as he circled around to get a better look. Up close, he could see that many of the scars were old, healed over with rough tissue. Others looked more recent, still raw and inflamed. Tony backed toward the entrance. "Sam, we need to leave now." But Sam found himself stepping closer instead. Something about the way the creature looked at him reminded him of wounded soldiers he had treated during his military days. There was intelligence there and suffering, but no malice. The dragon's eye followed him as he knelt just out of reach. Sam had no idea if the creature could understand him, but he spoke anyway. "Easy there, big guy. We're not here to hurt you." The dragon's breathing changed slightly, becoming less labored. Its eye blinked slowly, a gesture that somehow seemed deliberate. Sam pulled out his medical kit, a habit left over from his army days. The basic supplies wouldn't do much for wounds this size, but he had to try something. The creature watched as he approached with antiseptic and bandages. "Sam, what are you doing?" Tony called from the entrance. "What does it look like?" "I'm helping." The first touch of the antiseptic on one of the smaller wounds made the dragon flinch, but it didn't pull away. If anything, it seemed to relax as Sam worked. The wound was deeper than he had thought, but it was clean. Someone or something had been caring for these injuries, though not recently. As he worked, Sam found himself talking to the creature. He told it about finding the asteroid, about the long journey from Mars, about how his daughter would react when she heard about meeting a real dragon. The creature's eye never left his face, and Sam got the strange feeling it understood every word. Hours passed before Sam realized how long he had been working. He had cleaned and bandaged a dozen wounds, using up most of his supplies. The dragon seemed more alert now, its breathing easier. "I'll be back tomorrow," Sam told it, gathering his equipment. "I'll bring more medical supplies." The dragon's eye followed him to the entrance. Just before Sam stepped through the opening, he heard something that made him stop. It was barely a whisper, more felt than heard, but it sounded almost like words. "Thank you." Sam turned back, but the dragon had closed its eye again. He stood there for a long moment, wondering if he had imagined it. On the ship, Tony paced the small common area, while Sam inventoried their medical supplies. They would need to make a supply run to the nearest station, but that could wait a few days. "You can't be serious about going back there," Tony said. "That thing could kill us both without breaking a sweat." Sam looked up from his list. "Did you see how it looked at me? That's not a monster, Tony. That's someone who's been hurt and alone for a very long time." Tony threw his hands up in frustration. "It's an alien, Sam. We don't know anything about it. For all we know, it's some kind of prisoner that was locked up for good reasons." The thought had occurred to Sam as well. The crystalline chamber looked more like a prison than a nest, but he couldn't shake the image of that eye, filled with pain and loneliness that seemed older than the stars themselves. That night, Sam dreamed of fire and darkness, of battles fought in the void between worlds. He woke with the taste of smoke in his mouth and the sound of that whispered thanks still echoing in his mind. The next morning he loaded his pack with every medical supply they had and headed back to the chamber. The dragon was awake when he arrived, its massive head turned toward the entrance as if it had been waiting for him. This time, when Sam approached, the dragon moved its wings slightly, revealing more wounds underneath. It was an invitation, and Sam accepted it gladly. 5 days had passed since Sam first discovered the dragon, and their routine had become almost natural. Each morning he would pack his supplies and make the short journey through the asteroid to the crystal chamber. Each morning the great creature would be waiting for him, its enormous eye tracking his movements with what Sam had come to recognize as anticipation. The dragon's wounds were healing faster than should have been possible. The deep gashes that had looked infected were now clean and closing. The creature's breathing had improved dramatically, and there was a subtle change in the color of its scales. Where before they had been a lifeless gray, Sam could now see hints of deep red and gold beneath the surface. Today felt different, though. As Sam entered the chamber, the dragon lifted its head completely off the ground for the first time. The movement was slow and clearly caused some pain, but there was determination in it. "Good morning to you too," Sam said, setting down his pack. "Feeling stronger today?" The dragon's response came not as words, but as images that suddenly filled Sam's mind. He saw himself from the dragon's perspective, a tiny figure moving around its massive body with careful, gentle hands. The images were accompanied by feelings of gratitude and something that might have been affection. Sam stumbled backward, his hand going to his head. "What was that?" The dragon's eye widened, and Sam felt a wave of concern wash over him. Not his own concern, but the dragon's. It was apologizing, he realized. The mental contact had been unintentional. "It's okay," Sam said, though his head was still spinning. "You can talk to me that way?" This time the contact was gentler, more controlled. Images flowed between them, but slowly enough that Sam could process them. He saw the dragon as it had been before, scales blazing with color, wings spread wide as it soared through space itself. He saw battles against things that his mind could barely comprehend, creatures of pure darkness that seemed to devour light itself. Then came images of imprisonment. The dragon chained with bonds of crystal and energy, its fire slowly dimming over centuries of isolation. Sam felt the creature's despair as if it were his own, the crushing weight of abandonment and forgotten purpose. When the contact ended, Sam found himself sitting on the crystal floor, tears streaming down his face. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been here?" The answer came as numbers, but also as the feeling of time stretching endlessly. Thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. Sam wiped his eyes and stood up. He walked over to examine the dragon's broken wing more carefully. The bones had healed wrong, he could see that now. Several of the wing supports were fused together, and one of the main struts was bent at an angle that would make flight impossible. "We can fix this," Sam said, running his hands along the damaged bone. "It won't be easy, but we can fix it." The dragon's surprise flowed through their connection. It had accepted that it would never fly again. Over the following days, Sam began bringing tools from the ship. His engineering background served him well as he studied the dragon's wing structure. It was remarkably similar to the framework of the atmospheric fighters he had maintained in the Defense Force, just scaled up to impossible proportions. Tony thought he had lost his mind completely. "You're talking about performing surgery on an alien dragon with mining equipment," Tony said as Sam loaded cutting tools into his pack. "Do you hear yourself?" "The wing bones are fused wrong," Sam explained patiently. If we can break the bad joints and reset them properly, it should heal correctly this time. And if you kill it? Sam paused at the airlock. Then at least it dies knowing someone cared enough to try. The surgery took 3 days. The dragon remained conscious throughout, its pain flowing through their mental link along with its trust. Sam had to take frequent breaks, overwhelmed by the intensity of the shared experience. But each time he stopped, the dragon would send him images of encouragement, memories of soaring through starfields and diving between planets. When it was over, Sam had reset 4 major bone breaks and realigned the wing's entire structure. He fashioned a support framework from asteroid metal, creating a brace that would hold everything in place while it healed. The dragon's gratitude was so powerful it knocked Sam to his knees. As the weeks passed, their bond deepened. The dragon began sharing more of its memories, and Sam started to understand the creature's true nature. It had been a guardian, protector of entire star systems. Its kind had been created by forces Sam couldn't comprehend to stand against cosmic threats that periodically emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies. The dragon's name, as close as Sam could pronounce it, was Ashtar. It had fought in the last great war against entities called the Void-Bringers, creatures that consumed life itself. Ashtar had been wounded in the final battle, and when it sought refuge to heal, it had been betrayed. The Galactic Council, a collection of ancient civilizations that governed much of known space, had been afraid. They saw Ashtar's power in the destruction that had followed the Dragon Wars, and they chose to imprison rather than trust. They locked Ashtar away in this crystal chamber, hidden in the outer system where no one would find it. They were afraid you would become like the things you fought, Sam said one day as he checked the wing brace. Ashtar's response was tinged with sadness. The dragon understood their fear, even as it had been crushed by their betrayal. It had spent centuries wondering if they were right, if the violence of war had changed it into something dangerous. Sam sat down next to the dragon's enormous head. "I've seen monsters," he said. "Real ones during the war. You're not one of them. Monsters don't feel guilt or question themselves." Through their link, Sam felt something shift in the dragon's emotional landscape. It was a subtle change but significant. For the first time in millennia, Ashtar began to believe it might truly be worthy of redemption. The day Ashtar first moved its repaired wing was a moment Sam would remember for the rest of his life. The movement was small, just a slight flexing of the wing joints, but the dragon's joy was overwhelming. Sam found himself laughing and crying at the same time, caught up in the creature's elation. That night, as Sam prepared to return to the ship, Ashtar shared one more memory. It was recent, from just before Sam had found it. The dragon had been preparing to let itself die, its will to live finally exhausted by centuries of solitude. Then a small human had stumbled into its prison and shown it kindness without expecting anything in return. Sam felt the dragon's gratitude wash over him one more time as he walked back to the ship. Behind him, for the first time in thousands of years, scales that had been gray were beginning to glow with inner fire. Tomorrow he would bring Tony to meet the dragon properly. It was time to start planning for what came next. Tony's scream echoed through the crystal chamber as a small jet of flame shot past his head, close enough to singe his hair. He dove behind a cluster of crystals while Sam stood his ground, watching Ashtar with fascination rather than fear. The flame had been an accident. Ashtar was trying to show them both how its abilities were returning, but the dragon's control was still shaky after centuries of dormancy. The fire that once could melt asteroids was now no bigger than a welding torch, but it was progress. "Sorry about that," Sam called to Tony, who was still hiding behind the crystals. "Ashtar's still getting used to having fire again." Through their mental link, Sam felt the dragon's embarrassment and amusement. Ashtar found Tony's reaction entertaining, though it was also concerned about frightening Sam's friend. Over the past month, Tony had gradually overcome his fear of the dragon. It helped that Ashtar had made an effort to appear less threatening, keeping its head low when Tony was around and being careful with its movements. The breakthrough had come when Tony witnessed Sam working on some particularly difficult repairs to the wing brace, and Ashtar had used its mental abilities to help guide the work. Now Tony was part of their small team, though he still jumped whenever Ashtar's fire came out unexpectedly. "The flame is getting stronger," Sam observed, walking closer to examine the scorch mark on the chamber wall. Yesterday it barely singed the crystal. Today it actually melted some of it. Ashtar's response came as images of how its fire had once been. Sam saw the dragon breathing streams of plasma that could cut through starship hulls, creating barriers of superheated gas that could protect entire planets. The memories were tinged with longing and uncertainty about whether such power would ever return. The physical changes in the dragon were remarkable. Its scales now showed clear patterns of red and gold, and there was a subtle glow beneath its hide when it was concentrating. The wing that Sam had repaired was almost fully healed, and Ashtar had begun extending both wings in careful exercises. But the most significant change was in the dragon's spirit. Where once there had been resignation and despair, now there was hope and growing confidence. Ashtar had begun sharing memories of better times, showing Sam and Tony glimpses of the civilizations it had once protected. "Tell me about the other dragons," Sam said during one of their sessions. He was checking the wing brace, which would probably be ready to remove soon. The response came as a flood of images and emotions. There had been dozens of Ashtar's kind once, each one a guardian of specific regions of space. They had been connected to each other across vast distances, sharing knowledge and coordinating their efforts against cosmic threats. Ashtar was the last. Sam felt the dragon's grief as if it were his own. The others had died in the final war against the Voidbringers, sacrificing themselves to seal the rifts through which the darkness had been pouring. Ashtar had survived only because it had been assigned to guard the outer regions, away from the heaviest fighting. "You're not alone anymore," Sam said, placing his hand on one of the dragon's scales. "You have us now." The gratitude that flowed through their link was so intense that Sam had to sit down. Tony, who was becoming more sensitive to the emotional exchanges between them, looked up from the equipment he was organizing. "Everything okay?" Tony asked. "Just dragon feelings," Sam replied. "They're pretty intense." It was during their 7th week together that Ashtar first attempted to fly. Sam and Tony were working on expanding the chamber entrance to make it easier to bring larger equipment through when they heard a sound like thunder behind them. They turned to see Ashtar with both wings fully extended, the repaired wing moving smoothly alongside the healthy one. The dragon's scales were glowing brighter than ever, and small flames flickered around its nostrils with excitement. "Easy there," Sam said, but he was grinning. "Take it slow." Ashtar's first flight lasted only a few seconds and covered maybe 20 feet, but it was flight nonetheless. The dragon landed heavily, clearly exhausted, but its joy was infectious. Sam and Tony found themselves cheering and laughing as if they had just witnessed something miraculous, which, Sam reflected, they had. Word of their activities had begun to spread through the outer colonies. Sam had been forced to call for supplies several times, and the vendors were curious about his unusual requests. Medical supplies, metalworking tools, and now various technological components that didn't make sense for a simple mining operation. Dr. Lisa Patel was the first outsider to join them. She was a xenobiologist from the research station at Europa, who had heard rumors about Sam's discovery. When she arrived with a ship full of advanced medical equipment, Sam decided to trust her with the truth. Her reaction to Ashtar was everything Sam had hoped for and more. Instead of fear or aggression, Dr. Patel approached the dragon with scientific curiosity and genuine respect. She spent hours examining Ashtar with instruments that didn't require touching, asking permission for everything through Sam's translation. "This is incredible," she told Sam after her initial examination. "The cellular structure is unlike anything in our databases, but it's remarkably efficient. And the energy generation system is something our physicists have been theorizing about for decades." More importantly, Dr. Patel brought medical supplies that were actually appropriate for treating something Ashtar's size. Under her guidance, Sam was able to address several injuries that had been beyond his capabilities. Engineer Marcus Webb arrived 2 days later, drawn by stories of impossible technology. He took one look at Ashtar's wing structure and immediately began sketching modifications to the support brace that would be lighter and more flexible. "This is biomechanical engineering at a level we can barely imagine," Marcus told Sam as they worked together to install the new brace. "The way the bone density changes along the length of the wing, the muscle fiber orientation, the integration of the energy channels for flight power, it's beautiful." Through their growing mental connection, Sam could feel Ashtar's pleasure at being appreciated for more than just its destructive capabilities. The dragon began sharing technical knowledge with Marcus, showing him energy manipulation techniques that human science hadn't even discovered yet. Within a month, their small group had grown to 8 people. They came from different backgrounds, scientists, engineers, a few military veterans like Sam, but they all shared a common fascination with Ashtar and a desire to help. The chamber became a workshop where human ingenuity combined with dragon wisdom. They developed new materials by combining human manufacturing techniques with energy manipulation methods Ashtar taught them. They created communication devices that could interface directly with the dragon's telepathic abilities. Most importantly, they gave Ashtar something it had lost centuries ago, a sense of purpose. The day Ashtar first flew outside the asteroid was a celebration for everyone. The dragon burst from the chamber opening they had enlarged. Wings spread wide as it soared through the vacuum of space. Its scales blazed with inner fire, and for the first time since Sam had found it, Ashtar looked truly alive. But their celebration was cut short by an urgent message from Dr. Patel, who was monitoring deep space sensors from her ship. "Sam, you need to see this," she called over the radio. "We're picking up energy signatures I've never seen before. Multiple contacts coming from outside the galaxy." Through his link with Ashtar, Sam felt a sudden change in the dragon's emotions. Joy turned to alarm, then to grim recognition. Ashtar knew those energy signatures. The Voidbringers had returned. The emergency meeting took place in the enlarged chamber, with everyone gathered around a portable holographic display that Dr. Patel had set up. The readings were unmistakable and terrifying. 17 distinct energy signatures were moving through deep space toward the inner systems, each one massive enough to register on sensors from thousands of light-years away. Ashtar lay coiled around the group, its massive presence both protective and ominous. Through their mental link, Sam could feel the dragon's ancient memories stirring, bringing back the terror and determination of battles fought long ago. "These energy patterns don't match anything in our databases," Dr. Patel said, pointing to the swirling displays of data. "They're not ships, not in any conventional sense. They seem to be feeding on the vacuum itself, growing stronger as they move." Marcus looked up from his tablet where he had been running calculations. "At their current speed, they'll reach the outer colonies in 6 days, the inner systems in 12. Through their connection, Sam felt Ashtar's grim confirmation. The Voidbringers moved slowly but inevitably, like a plague spreading through space. They consumed everything in their path, leaving behind regions of absolute emptiness where even light itself was devoured. "Can we warn the authorities?" Tony asked. "Get the military involved?" Dr. Patel shook her head. "I've been trying for hours. The Galactic Council isn't responding to emergency channels. The human defense forces think we're either crazy or running some kind of elaborate hoax." Sam felt a sudden shift in Ashtar's emotions. The dragon was remembering something specific, something important. Images flooded through their link, showing Sam a hidden monitoring station built into a nearby asteroid. The Galactic Council had been watching them all along. "They know," Sam said quietly. "The Council has been monitoring us since we found Ashtar." The revelation sent a chill through the group. They had thought their discovery was secret, but ancient eyes had been watching every moment of Ashtar's recovery. As if summoned by Sam's words, the air in the chamber began to shimmer. A figure materialized before them, tall and composed of what looked like living light. Its form was vaguely humanoid but clearly alien, with features that seemed to shift and flow like liquid energy. "I am Elder Karis of the Galactic Council," the being said, its voice echoing strangely in the crystal chamber. "We have indeed been watching, and we come now to ask forgiveness from the guardian we wronged." Ashtar's reaction was immediate and complex. Sam felt waves of old anger mixed with surprise and a desperate hope for understanding. The dragon had not expected to see any council member again, especially not one seeking forgiveness. Elder Karis approached slowly, its energy form flickering with what might have been nervousness. "We were afraid," it continued. "After the Dragon Wars, after seeing the destruction that followed your battles with the Voidbringers, we chose imprisonment over trust. We convinced ourselves it was for the greater good." Through their link, Sam felt Ashtar's memories of that betrayal. The dragon had come to the council seeking aid after the final battle, wounded and alone. Instead of help, they had offered chains. "The greater good," Sam said, his voice hard with anger. "You locked away the galaxy's protector because you were scared of the very power that could save you." The Elder's form dimmed. Yes, and now the Void Bringers return and our fleets are useless against them. We have weapons that can destroy planets, but these entities consume energy itself. Every shot we fire only makes them stronger. Dr. Patel stepped forward, her scientific mind engaging with the problem. What exactly are they? The Void Bringers? It was Ashtar who answered, sending images directly into all their minds. They saw creatures of living darkness, entities that existed in the spaces between realities. They fed on life force, on the energy that bound matter together, on the fundamental forces that made existence possible. The dragons had been created specifically to fight them, beings of pure creative fire to stand against destructive void. But the war had cost almost everything, and in the end, only Ashtar had survived. We need to evacuate the colonies, Marcus said. Breaking the heavy silence that had fallen over the group, Elder Karis shook its head. There is nowhere to run. The Void Bringers will consume everything in this galaxy given time. The only hope is to stop them here, as was done before. All eyes turned to Ashtar, who slowly raised its great head. Sam felt the dragon's resolve crystallizing, ancient purpose reasserting itself despite the fear and uncertainty. You can't do this alone, Sam said through their link. Not this time. Images flowed between them, showing Sam the true scale of what Ashtar faced. The Void Bringers were stronger now, having fed in the dark spaces between galaxies for millennia. Even at full power, Ashtar might not be enough. Then we help, Dr. Patel said firmly. She had caught enough of the mental exchange to understand the situation. Human technology, dragonfire, working together. Elder Karis looked surprised. You would fight beside the Guardian? You understand the danger? Sam stood up, his decision already made. Ashtar saved our friend when we didn't even know we needed saving. Now it's our turn. Over the next 3 days, their small team worked frantically to prepare. Marcus and the other engineers modified their ships with technology that Ashtar shared through their mental links. Dr. Patel developed energy shields based on the dragon's natural defenses. Even Tony, who still jumped when Ashtar moved too quickly, threw himself into the work with desperate determination. Word spread through unofficial channels to other human colonies and settlements. Ships began arriving at their asteroid. Volunteers who had heard fragments of the story and refused to let one being face cosmic horror alone. Miners, merchants, retired military personnel, scientists who wanted to study the phenomena firsthand. Elder Karis watched it all with something that might have been wonder. In all our millennia of existence, we never considered this approach. Individual sacrifice for collective survival, yes. But collective sacrifice for individual support? This is something new. Ashtar's response came as warm approval flowing through the mental link it now shared with several of the humans. The dragon was learning from them just as they learned from it. Human adaptability was showing new possibilities that ancient wisdom had never imagined. The final preparation was the hardest. Ashtar shared its life force with Sam, creating a permanent bond that would allow the human to survive in the vacuum of space for short periods. The process was exhausting for both of them, but it would let Sam stay close during the coming battle. As their makeshift fleet prepared to depart, Elder Karis made one final revelation. The Council fleets will support you, though we do not expect to survive the encounter. We failed in our duty once. We will not do so again. Through the viewing ports of their ships, they could see Ashtar flying alongside them, scales blazing with renewed fire. The dragon looked like a star given form and purpose, beautiful and terrible and absolutely determined. Behind them, space itself began to flicker as Council vessels emerged from hidden dimensions. Ahead lay the advancing darkness of the Voidbringers, entities of pure entropy that had devoured entire galaxies in the deep past. Sam felt Ashtar's mixture of fear and excitement as they accelerated toward the edge of the system. This time the dragon would not fight alone. The first Voidbringer appeared on their sensors like a hole in space itself. Sam watched from the bridge of his modified mining ship as the entity emerged from the dark between stars. A writhing mass of absolute nothingness that hurt to look at directly. The thing was kilometers across and growing larger as it fed on cosmic background radiation. Ashtar flew point position ahead of their ragtag fleet, scales blazing like a miniature sun. Through their bond, Sam felt the dragon's ancient fury awakening alongside its fear. This was what had destroyed its kind, what had forced the galaxy to its knees millennia ago. Remember the plan? Dr. Patel's voice crackled over the comm system. We keep the smaller entities busy while Ashtar handles the big ones. Don't try to engage them directly. The plan was desperate and probably suicidal, but it was all they had. The human ships would use their modified weapons to harass the Voidbringers, keeping them distracted while Ashtar delivered the killing blows with dragonfire. The council ships would provide heavy support, though Elder Karis had warned that their energy weapons might actually feed the entities. The battle began without warning. Tendrils of darkness lashed out from the main Voidbringer, seeking the life energy of their ships. Sam yanked his controls hard to port as one of the seeking shadows passed close enough to frost his viewport. Around him, the human fleet scattered into attack formation. Marcus had done incredible work in just 3 days, modifying their mining equipment into weapons that fired concentrated packets of matter instead of energy. The theory was that the Voidbringers could consume energy, but had trouble with solid projectiles. The theory proved correct. Sam watched through his instruments as a barrage of metal slugs tore into one of the smaller entities, disrupting its form even though the damage seemed to heal almost immediately. The key was keeping them off balance. Ashtar's first attack was magnificent and terrifying. The dragon swooped down on the largest Voidbringer, breathing a stream of plasma that burned with the heat of stellar cores. Where the fire touched the entity, reality seemed to reassert itself, pushing back the consuming darkness. But there were so many of them. For every Voidbringer that fell to dragonfire, 2 more seemed to emerge from the deep dark. Sam felt Ashtar's growing exhaustion through their bond, the enormous drain of maintaining such destructive power. The council ships are breaking formation, Tony reported from his gunner position. They're taking heavy losses. Through the viewport, Sam could see Elder Karis's vessel being torn apart by writhing shadows. The council's energy shields were worse than useless against enemies that fed on power itself. But the ancient beings fought on anyway, using their ships as weapons when their guns failed. Sam, we've got a problem, Dr. Patel called over the comm. One of the big ones is heading for the inner system. Ashtar can't be everywhere at once. Sam felt the dragon's anguish as it was forced to choose between targets. Ashtar could stop the entity heading for populated worlds, but that would leave the main concentration free to overwhelm the fleet. I'm going after it, Sam announced, changing course toward the escaping Voidbringer. Are you insane? Tony shouted. Our guns barely scratched the small ones. But Sam wasn't thinking about guns. Through his bond with Ashtar, he had learned things about dragonfire that the ancient creature had never thought to teach. The fire wasn't just plasma, it was creative force given form. It was life pushing back against entropy. And thanks to their permanent bond, Sam carried a spark of that fire within himself. He flew his ship directly at the Voidbringer, ignoring the tendrils of darkness that reached for him. At the last possible moment, he activated the emergency life support system that would allow him to survive in vacuum, and blew the ship's airlock. The explosion sent him tumbling toward the entity, protected only by the energy field that Ashtar's shared life force generated around him. Sam felt the terrible cold of the Voidbringer's presence, the way it tried to drain the warmth from his body and soul. But he also felt the fire within him responding. The spark that Ashtar had shared blazed to life, pushing back against the consuming darkness. Sam found himself floating in a bubble of creative energy, a tiny star burning in the heart of the void. The Voidbringer recoiled, its form wavering as dragonfire ate away at its essence from within. Through their bond, Sam felt Ashtar's shock and pride as the human proved that the fire could burn in any heart brave enough to kindle it. The entity's destruction sent ripples through the others. For the first time in the battle, the Voidbringers seemed uncertain, confused by this new development. They had faced dragonfire before, but never from a source so small and unexpected. Ashtar seized the moment, diving into the heart of the enemy formation with renewed fury. The dragon's fire burned brighter than ever, fed not just by its own power but by the courage of the humans fighting alongside it. One by one, the Voidbringers fell. The smaller entities were overwhelmed by the coordinated attacks of the human fleet, while Ashtar's enhanced fire consumed the larger ones. Elder Karis rallied the surviving council ships for a final push that scattered the remaining enemies. When the last Voidbringer was destroyed, Sam found himself drifting in space, kept alive only by the energy field around him. Ashtar swooped down to collect him, gathering the human gently in its claws as they returned to the fleet. The aftermath was somber despite their victory. Too many ships had been lost, Too many brave souls consumed by the darkness. But they had won, and more importantly, they had proven something that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. "The bond you have created," Elder Karis said as they gathered in the crystal chamber one last time. "It changes everything. We thought the dragons were gone forever, but you have shown us that their fire can live in any willing heart." Ashtar's response flowed through the mental link it now shared with all of them. The dragon had learned that isolation was its greatest enemy, that the fire burned brightest when shared rather than hoarded. Over the following months, the news spread throughout the galaxy. Humans began arriving at their asteroid in greater numbers, drawn by stories of the partnership between species. Some came to learn, others to help, many simply to witness the impossible. Friendship between dragon and engineer. The Galactic Council formally apologized for their treatment of Ashtar and offered to establish a new order based on cooperation rather than fear. They recognized humanity as a full member species, acknowledging their unique gift for awakening the best in others. But for Sam, the greatest reward was simpler. Each morning he would find Ashtar waiting for him in the crystal chamber, scales glowing with health and inner fire. The dragon was no longer alone, no longer forgotten. They had become guardians together, protector and protected, fire and kindling. When new threats emerged from the dark spaces between stars, they would face them as one. Human ingenuity and dragon wisdom, creativity and power, hope and ancient strength combined. And in the chambers of the Galactic Council, Elder Karis kept a recording of that first moment when a human engineer chose to help a broken dragon. Sometimes when the weight of governance grew too heavy, the Elder would replay those images and remember that compassion could transform the universe itself. The fire that had nearly died in isolation now burned in 1,000 hearts, carried by those who had learned that the greatest strength came not from standing alone, but from choosing to stand together against the dark.